No kitchen is complete without a stack of cutting boards and a few good knives. I use mine every day to chop ingredients, like this apple that's headed for a bowl of oatmeal. I wonder how hard it would be to make a good kitchen knife. First I need some steel. This old table saw blade should work. I'll just cut out a shape similar to another knife that I like. Sorry I don't have an awesome clip of sparks flying through the air. I don't have an angle grinder, and this hacksaw works well enough. Next I'll refine the shape of the blade with a file. This is just a Craftsman mill bastard I picked up years ago. It seems to work this steel decently. I don't see any hollows in the edge, so this should work. This steel is about 1/16 of an inch thick. I'll put a bevel on either side to bring the edge down to about 1/32 of an inch. A serious knife maker would have a proper jig to set the angle of this bevel. I've just stacked tape for my file to write on. The tape is just enough thicker than the blade that the file swings down to the angle I want as I grind through the blade. Each side took a little over an hour of filing, including breaks to clean out the file, refresh the tape, and to rest my arms. Now I'll sand out my filing marks. I can also remove the printed table saw instructions and smooth out the original manufacturer's grind. I'll start with 60 grit sandpaper, and then move through a couple of grits until I reach 220. The last thing to do before hardening the blade is to drill 2 holes that I'll use later to pin the handle. I'll drill 2 pilot holes with a small bit first, then use a wider bit to take them to the diameter of my pins. If you're planning to make your own knife, use this clip as a warning of what not to do. Without a forge, I was only able to get the last few millimeters of the blade to the temperature required to harden. That area was glowing red and had lost its magnetism. The file that I used to grind it earlier even seemed to confirm that the area had hardened. If the knife gets used enough, I'll eventually remove enough material with a sharpening stone to reach the softer material of the rest of the blade. This will have to do for now, though. After tempering the blade in my oven, I removed the scale and then polished the blade with up to 600 grit sandpaper. Finally, I can leave the metalworking behind and move on to something I'm more familiar with. This knife needs a handle, and I can make one out of wood. I have this chunk of maple that is easily thick enough to make a handle using just a lengthwise strip. It's not very exciting, though. I also have a chunk of cherry with a similar story. The more interesting scraps I have are some yellow heart, some rosewood, some bloodwood, some purple heart, some wenge, and oh, that's just another piece of cherry. Unfortunately, none of these are quite thick enough. The yellow heart and the rosewood are each a 1/4 inch thick, and the rest are only an 1/8 inch. I need about 3/8 inch. I could stack a few, but that just looks a bit boring. So instead, I'll rip some 1/8 inch strips of that cherry, as well as some 1/8 inch strips of that maple. And I'll slice that rosewood in too. Then I'll glue the strips into a contrasting lamination. My lamination is about an inch thick. I want a handle about 4 inches long. To get a segment that long, at 3/8 of an inch thick, I'll slice across the glue up at 8 degrees. Tape on my crosscut sled, superglued to tape on the piece, held everything in place safely. This striped chevron pattern should make a pretty handle. I'll start cutting to length by putting the angle I want on the front of the handle. Then I'll drill the holes for the pins to keep everything aligned. Finally, I can cut the tail end perpendicular at the rough length. The wood is just a bit longer than the tang of the knife, so I'll route half of the tang thickness out of each side of the handle, so that the remaining wood can meet past the end of the tang. I'll fix the handle to the knife using epoxy. I've tinted the epoxy black, hoping that the dark color will make any gaps between the wood and the steel less noticeable. Leaving the handle only roughly shaped up to this point gave me plenty of room to remove stray epoxy after it had set. I'll use a variety of tools to shape the handle, starting with a chisel to remove bulk waste, and a rasp to remove a bit more, and finally sandpaper to reach a comfortable shape. Plus one more attack with the chisel to add a comfortable taper to the leading end. Finally, it's time to apply finish. Birchwood Casey True Oil has been my go-to recently. 10 coats with light sanding in between left these handles with a rich color and a nice shine. The only thing left is sharpening. I'll start with the coarsest side of this DMT diamond stone. It will make relatively quick work of shaping the edge. After working through the intermediate grits, I'll finish with the finest until I've just removed the wire edge. After a quick wash, it's time for a test. The knife works great on this onion, which is going into a pan of tomato sauce destined for pasta. Pasta. Time to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Thanks for watching.